What's up, everybody?
Graham's alive, you guys.
I lived. I had a run-in with the COVID-19, with the coronavirus. My first one, I had a really good run, almost 5 years, but it got me. And that shit is miserable. So get your vaccines, wear masks, be a decent person. Everyone listening out there.
So, anyways, welcome back to I don't know what that means.
And I still don't know what that means, but we're gonna make the best of it.
A lot of people they record in separate rooms when they have COVID, and we don't do that around here. It's not how we play.
I don't know that we have the gear to do it. I don't think that we could have. I mean, also, I would not have been my normal charming self.
That's fair. I didn't think you were gonna go for it, so I didn't even suggest it.
Yeah, that would have been bad. But yeah, apologies for the at this point typical delay in
that was longer than typical.
It was. I just mean that it's becoming typical that there are delays.
Yeah.
I feel like we set a real high bar switching to weekly releases, and then we went a month without anything. More than a month, I guess. But we're back.
Yay!
We are back, and we are ready to go.
What are we talking about today, Graham?
So today this was actually kind of your idea initially. I had a list of kind of disparate topics, and I was like, all of these feel like very short episodes on their own. And you, being the smart one in the pair here, suggested that we do a spooky season themed episode on you said body horror, and this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how long it's been since we've recorded. That we actually theoretically had multiple spooky season episodes on deck. Yeah, so this one kind of fell by the wayside a little bit for the aforementioned reasons, but neurodivergent bodies are weird in a lot of ways that are sometimes unexpected. And so I thought we could chat a little bit about some of those things.
Okay, that being said, I want to just quickly say we are still going to do an episode on meltdowns as requested. I did tell people that we would be doing that. So, look, everybody, I just work here. We'll get to it. I'm sorry.
We do have a list. There is a list of other topics that I kind of want to get to, but
yeah, Graham's just rebooting still. So be
truly, yes. So, okay, yeah, neurodivergent bodies are weird. And I think that there is this conception that that ADHD, that autism, that all these other things are not personality things, but like they affect us like on a purely mental kind of level,
Okay.
And there are a lot of comorbidities is the term that gets used a lot. There are a lot of diagnoses that are very common. Additional diagnoses or like related-ish diagnoses that come up with people who are neurodivergent. And so, yeah, being autistic, being ADHD affects me in ways beyond, I have trouble concentrating, and I'm monotropic, and, all these mental kind of effects. So I think we start with the obvious one, stimming. And its sort of related suite of behaviors, BFRBs, or body-focused repetitive behaviors. BFRBs are things like hair pulling and skin picking and compulsive plucking of eyebrows or of, various body hairs, whatever is a thing. And BFRBs are sometimes a stim, and sometimes they're just, I don't know, a response to things, I guess. I myself pick at the skin on my fingers. The sides of my thumbs are entirely scar tissue. I can't feel anything on the sides of my thumbs any longer. And for me, like, boredom tends to trigger it. So it's like it is a stim. It's a response to being bored, and it's a way to kind of regulate that sensation, I guess, of being bored, or of being nervous is another time that I do that a lot. But these kinds of things are really common for neurodivergent people. And I guess BFRBs are kind of like a subset of stimming in general, which is really about regulating emotional state in most cases. Stimming is one of those things that's kind of fascinating because everyone does it. It's not just a neurodivergent thing. It's not just an autistic thing. Anytime you see someone who's like bouncing their leg, or like kind of rocking back and forth while they're waiting in line or something like that, that's a stim. Really anything can be a stim, assuming that you're doing it, as some kind of like emotional regulation outlet. So people will do it in response to the whole range of emotions. Sometimes people will stim when they're happy, they'll stim when they're sad, they'll stim when they're bored. Stimming tends to be more common for me when I am like stressed. Particularly boredom is a huge trigger for me. And so I will just start like fidgeting with things that I have around. I don't tend to have many like really obvious stims the way that some folks do. There are a lot of people who have like really big like flapping kinds of behaviors, or like hand waving kinds of behaviors, things like that. And I don't know if for me that stuff just never really caught on, or if it's that I kind of learned to mask around them. But I've always worn like a lot of rings and stuff, and I'll like just kind of play with them and turn them and twist them. Stimming is one of those things that's like I said, everybody does this. It tends to be more prevalent and a lot of times more like kind of noticeable in neurodivergent people. But yeah, everybody does it, and it's things like tapping your fingers on the steering wheel when you're driving. So that's, as I'm doing this, I'm like playing with the like coiled part of the microphone cord, or the my earphone cord, just like kind of stretching it and twisting it and untwisting it. And
every time you do that, it stresses me out, and I keep thinking I need to get you like a fucking stress ball or something to play with, because it, knock on wood, our equipment is good enough for now. We've figured it out, but I'm like very nervous about you damaging it.
That's kind of another thing about it too. In most cases, it's like subconscious. Like it's just sort of an autonomic thing that I don't realize that I'm doing. And I think it's probably the same for a lot of other people. I imagine that if you're the kind of person who has like really big stims, a lot of kind of arm waving, hand flapping, a lot of vocal stims. So if you're that kind of person, maybe you're more aware that you're doing it. I don't know. I'm sorry. I think I interrupted you.
That would never happen. I was curious, like, I know some people who, I remember them like being told like and corrected like not to do specific behaviors as kids. Like, do you have memories like when you were growing up and getting told to sit still or like quit doing whatever you were doing in public? Specifically like regarding stimming at all, or do you think like it was just like so early that that's why you don't have like maybe bigger physical stims?
So my most like obvious kind of memory of that is my parents, particularly my mother, always used to yell at me about the skin picking, because I would bleed a lot. I remember being like really, really young, and I don't even know where I learned the phrase nervous habit, and I don't know that I completely understood exactly like the implications of that. But at one point, my mom asked me why I did it, or like made some kind of a comment about it, and my kind of knee jerk reaction was like, "Oh, nervous habit or whatever." And I was right, although I didn't really know that at the time. But like, no, I don't know if I was ever a person who really did those like big noticeable kinds of stims at all. I don't remember ever doing that kind of thing, and like, there are a couple that as I've been trying to unmask over the last couple of years, there are a couple that I'm more aware of. There's this weird, like, sort of, like this thing that I do. I know the audience can't see this, but I like kind of wave my arms. It's sort of like octopusy. I probably like stim vocally a lot more than I realize that I do. And I think in some cases that might have just been like channeled into singing along with music or something, as opposed to just like making noises. I think for people who have the other brand of ADHD, the hyperactive folks, they probably get yelled at a lot more about that kind of stimming behavior, being fidgety and
Mm-hmm.
leg bouncing or tapping or, whatever else. I don't tend to do that a lot, I don't think. But again, one of the things that's sort of weird about stimming is that because it's like an autonomic response, I don't notice myself breathing or blinking either, unless I make an effort to, to see it. So I think there's probably a lot of that kind of thing that I do that I'm just not consciously aware of. Are there things that you can remember being told off about?
I used to bite my nails as well as like pick up my skin on my fingers. I mean, I borrow your skin glue pretty frequently these days. Mine is definitely like anxiety induced, and I don't bite my nails as much anymore, but I for sure like that's a compulsion. I remember I started doing it when my parents started dropping me off at one of their friends' house to like catch a bus that stopped at their address to pick the kids up to like go to school, but it wouldn't come to our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And their kids were fucking bullies and they were so mean. And like, I just remember like that's when I started doing it and I've never stopped.
I think that's pretty textbook, honestly. Those kinds of things probably start in response to some stimulus, probably some bad stimulus, I think that most of mine that I'm aware of are like responses to negative things. It's boredom or frustration, and I don't have kind of an intuitive way to regulate those kinds of emotions. So I tear at my skin or crack my knuckles or whatever it might be. But yeah, no, that's a great example, and just again kind of underlines the thing that like stimming is not a neurodivergent behavior. It's a human behavior. Like everybody has little stims. Whether it might be like clicking your pen, or you'll get people who have like kind of comfort items, like little plushies or whatever that would just like squeeze them or stroke them or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily register, I think, for people as being the same thing as, bouncing your leg or humming when you're bored or whatever it might be. But, kind of the same class of things. And like I said, it tends to be more prevalent in neurodivergent folks, I think, because we have more issues expressing and regulating our emotions in a lot of cases. And so it just becomes this kind of like physicalized thing because we don't know what to do with this feeling in our heads. And so we sing a song about it or whatever it might be. And a sort of related thing, and we've touched on this before, is interoception. So interoception is your sense of what's happening in your body, basically. And it covers things like pain responses, like being uncomfortable, needing to go to the bathroom. It covers being hungry, or really anything that like your body communicates to you about its current state or its current needs. And a lot of us have trouble with interoception. I myself am truly blessed. I have virtually none. I have absolutely no idea what is going on in my body at any given time. We've again touched on this in previous episodes, but like I don't know when I'm hungry unless I'm so hungry that like it becomes catastrophic. I don't know. I don't know if something is in pain, like if I've pulled a muscle or something, like I don't know about it unless it's really, really bad. And that's a brain wiring thing that a lot of us, have varying degrees of difficulty with. I am envious a bit of you in particular, but of just like neurotypical folks in general, people who have functional interoception, because it would be nice to know that I'm hungry. I assume that there is like an escalating slope of like hunger feeling, right? It starts off as kind of like a little thing and it grows and grows and grows and whatever. I don't get that notification at all until we're at the absolute top end of the thing. And like out of nowhere, all of a sudden, I will have like painful knots in my stomach. It'd be nice to know that I need to get to the bathroom before I'm bursting. So I'm a little envious of that. I feel like the lack of interoception is one of the things that like sometimes gets missed when we talk about neurodivergent traits. I think that that's something that people don't necessarily realize. And part of it is that, like, I don't know, without us discussing the differences in like the way that I feel hunger or pain or whatever else, like I don't know that my experience is different from yours, and I've never had any other experience of it. As far as I know, my body's level of signaling is normal, is just like, how it is. And when people talk about like lists of particularly autistic traits, but neurodivergent traits in general, like that, I think is one that is a little bit less sort of well known. Is that we're not getting those messages. And I don't know if it's that my body is not sending those messages at all, or if it is sending them, but like I'm not receiving them. Like it doesn't communicate those things in a way that like I can understand or process, I guess. Functionally, it doesn't matter. But I'm sort of interested in that, is like, why? What is the disconnect that like your body tells you when you're hungry and mine doesn't? And I think like the lack of interoception really feeds into a lot of other things that I kind of want to talk about. It may be related to certain kinds of stims, and I think that sometimes people probably stim just maybe to like feel something, just to like have some sensation, because otherwise they normally don't. I don't know that one causes the other, but a lot of particularly autistic folks, we have digestive issues from top to bottom. There are a lot of comorbidities for autistic people with like various and sundry digestive issues, Crohn's and, ulcerative colitis, and IBS is really common, is like a really common comorbidity. The two things coexist, the lack of interoception and, more like sort of formally defined digestive problems, and they kind of play off of one another, right? Like I don't think I have IBS because I can't tell that I need to go to the bathroom. I think that I can't tell that I need to go to the bathroom and I have IBS, and those two, don't help one another out. IBS is really common. It's not a digestive thing, but Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, is, I don't understand it very well. It relates to hypermobility, and it's like a collagen disorder. The body can't make collagen, or it can't keep collagen, or it has something to do with that, about like collagen and connective tissues and things like that, and it causes all kinds of issues. But there's a really common correlation between autism and EDS. So if you're autistic and hypermobile, if you do that thing where you can bend your thumb back and it touches your forearm, or you can stretch your skin like 3 inches away from your body or whatever, then it's not uncommon. I don't think that I have any kind of correlation there, mostly because I'm just so goddamn stiff all the time.
I was gonna say, you're like the opposite of hypermobile.
Right. I have a lot of mobility issues, and obviously the way that I work out and lifting and everything really has a lot to do with that. I don't think I'm incredibly stiff because I'm a power lifter. I think that I am incredibly stiff just anyway. How much of it is that just that I have stiffness issues? What else do we got? We got sleep issues, especially the ADHD folks among us. There is some research that suggests that ADHD people actually have a naturally later circadian rhythm. If you have ADHD and you find that you can't go to sleep at 10 o'clock and you're still up at 3 o'clock in the morning researching whatever, that's a common expression of ADHD. That's one of those things where a lot of these diagnoses are just a bucket of symptoms. It's not like a diagnosis that's like one or two specific things. Like when you have ADHD, it comes in 3 different flavors, and each flavor is like a list of traits that you might or might not have, expressions you might or might not have. Hence the sort of standard disclaimer that I try to put in a lot of the time, that like my ADHD is not the same as your ADHD, and don't be bummed if I say ADHD means X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't mean that for you. But that is not one that I have.
Yeah, no shit. It's like 8 o'clock and Graham's like, it's time to go to bed.
Some of that is just burnout, and I have a very limited reservoir of energy in any given day. But Yeah, no, I am a sleepy person. Just generally. I typically do not have any trouble getting to sleep. I can usually fall asleep really quickly, to the point where like
Mm-hmm.
uh sleep latency, like really, really low sleep latency like that is it's sometimes indicative of like sleep disorders, like sleep problems.
What would you say your sleep problem is?
I wonder sometimes if I have like apnea.
Narcolepsy?
I tend to fall asleep in response to being tired, as opposed to my incomplete understanding of narcolepsy is that like you tend to fall asleep just because.
Yeah, I was being hyperbolic.
Sure. See, I can't tell that. I yeah. This has upset Jen since the day that we met.
Mm-hmm.
I fall asleep very quickly. I don't tend to sleep deeply in the sense that like I fall asleep once and then I just wake up in the morning. And I have never once slept restfully. But I can get to sleep
Mm-hmm.
pretty easily most of the time. And yeah, my circadian rhythm is definitely like 8 p.m. and it's like, well, time to go lay down. Um, I should be up and out of bed at 6. And I think for a while I kind of attributed to it just being adjusted to that. You know, I don't know. When I was sick the other week, I was waking up at 11 and going to bed at 9 probably.
Well, yeah, you were sick.
Fair. I don't know. I have a couple of weeks off work coming up at the end of this month, and we will see what happens there. We'll see if I fall into some kind of, rhythm where I'm actually getting up at a regular time and getting to sleep at a regular time. I don't know. But yeah, ADHD, sleep issues, definitely a thing. Not for me, thankfully. I don't know what I would do if I were the type who, had to be researching like what is fire at 3 a.m. every day, which is sort of related to one of the things that's kind of interesting about ADHD in particular is we process stimulants differently. Um, the way that Ritalin and Adderall and various other ADHD meds work is they're meth, they're stimulants, which is why people who do not have ADHD take them in order to get like, hyper focus and like be awake and be really like energized and whatever. It has an opposite effect for us, and stimulants in general have an opposite effect, where it causes our brains to slow down. One of the things that I think is really interesting about it is that we don't know why. Like pharmacologically and like scientifically, we have no idea why the mechanism is, which I think is pretty interesting. How many times have we been out in the world and I'm like, I'm sleepy, I'm tired, whatever, and you're like, do you want to get coffee? And I'm like, that's not going to help. That's going to have an opposing effect there.
Which I remain confused about like when it's acceptable to get coffee, because sometimes we do get coffee in the afternoon, and you know what? Again, I just work here. Whatever. I'm happy to be here for the ride.
Part of it is that it is kind of unpredictable. It's not that anytime I ever have any stimulants, it makes me sleepy. Like sometimes coffee does sort of wake me up and energize me a little bit, but if that's a quantity thing, I don't know what that quantity is. If it's in response to other factors, I don't know what they are. So like it's random whether coffee is going to kind of perk me up a little bit or it's going to put me under. There is definitely a line. I can tell when I've had too much coffee because I become like forcefully sleepy. It's definitely a noticeable thing. Like I feel like I'm kind of like at my sort of Balmer peak of coffee, operationally. But yeah, if I put a lot more into it, I'm gonna find that I feel floppy and my brain is like, meh, nap time, whatever. But yeah, there's definitely like a too many coffee amount. Again, I think that threshold varies sometimes by the day, by I don't know, who knows what the factors are with the phase of the moon, the location of the nearest body of water. I couldn't tell you. I have never done cocaine, but I'm told that it has a similar effect on ADHD folks. You rip a fat rail and then take a power nap. I'm not curious enough to want to try it. I have had insomnia, like weird insomnia jags before, where it'll be like 2 a.m. and I'm just like, ugh, what the fuck? Like, I can't fall asleep. What the hell? And I have seriously considered, like, you know what? I'm just going to make a cup of coffee. I'm just going to make a fucking pot of coffee and guzzle it all. And then hopefully that'll put me under. So yeah, stimulant effects, very weird. What else we got? Oh, so, a lot of us have kind of hyperactive senses. The really common example is like we can hear the electricity in the walls, which is true. Light sensitivity is also really common. Again, as a person who has migraines, it's really fun to try and figure out, like, is the sun too bright because I'm autistic? Is the sun too bright because I need to go lay down? A lot of people have like smell sensitivities, and I don't think that my sense of smell is any more like acute, but I definitely know people who are like, somebody wearing perfume walks within 10 feet of me, then like I'm nauseated from it or whatever.
I feel like you've always got something to say about it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, maybe. Again, I think it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't have any frame of reference. Like, I don't know what it's like to have a different level of scent intensity. It doesn't strike me as being out of the ordinary. There are certain smells that I just can't handle being around. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is sharper.
Is it sharper, or are you just complaining a lot?
I mean, two things can be true.
I will say that the light sensitivity thing is a struggle for me personally to adapt to, because I prefer a lot of light to see when I'm cleaning, when I'm making stuff, when I feel like I can't fucking see half the time. And it is frustrating. But it also, I feel like it's just one of those things that has to be accommodated, because like I feel like it would be really shitty to be like, oh, here's this thing that like actively causes pain, let me just like shove it in your face. So it's tough.
I think that there is a very common neurodivergent aversion to what we call the big light.
Yeah.
We actually record here in our basement under a light fixture that I forget is a problem until I'm sitting under it and it is on. But it's got fluorescent CFL bulbs. And oh man, our CFL's awful. As a person who is prone to migraines, as a person who can see the flickering of these CFL bulbs and can like kind of hear the noise that they make, they're terrible. But like the light is just super harsh for whatever reason. And every time we turn this light on, I'm like, I've got to change these fucking bulbs. Yeah, so that's definitely a thing that I will cop to. What else? What else do I want to talk about? Posture issues, gait issues. These are pretty common. Some of us walk weird. I don't know if there's like a physical developmental issue where like our joints develop wrong or our bones, are pointed in the wrong directions or whatever. Or it's just that like our brains don't really like drive our bodies in the most effective way. And like we learn, sort of less efficient or less effective ways to like move around.
Is this a documented thing? Like, I've never heard this.
Yep. Autistics in particular, a lot of issues with like posture and just the way that our bodies move. I have kind of a weird gait, and like when I see myself walk, I can't even describe it really, like, but like I don't pick up my feet very much.
Yeah, fucking accurate. You're trying to single-handedly destroy our floor.
So like I don't always pick up my feet like very much off the floor when I'm walking, and like, my knees are a little bit further inward than they should be really. And if I stand, lock my knees, you can really tell that from like my hips to my knees comes in at like a pretty sharp angle, and then my like lower leg from my knee to my foot like kind of splays outward. Again, I don't know if that's a developmental thing that I just had, and in addition to that I am also autistic, or if the two things are like fairly related. But it's like IBS, it's like digestive things and Ehlers-Danlos and everything else. Like there's a high kind of comorbidity rate, particularly with the way that we walk, with gait and stuff. So yeah, I've considered trying to like get PT about it, because I mean, obviously, I get around fine. I I could squat twice my body weight. Like, my mechanics of locomotion are okay at this point. I'm 43 and I don't need mobility aids, and like I said, I do a very like leg heavy workout without any really significant issues. But I'm always curious, like, I don't know, is this potentially leading to problems down the road? You know what I mean? Or is it just like, this is the body I got and it's fine? So I've always sort of been like, if I had some time and some money laying around that I wasn't doing anything with, I might be tempted to go see like a PT about it and be like, should I try to make some changes? But I guess it's sort of a if it ain't broke kind of thing.
I feel like that would be up to them to say, but sure.
Right. Well, again, I've been driving this thing for the 43 years, and it's been good so far. Knocking on.
Well, yeah, but maybe you could get 43 more.
Oh my god. What a terrible thing to say to someone.
Shut the fuck up.
Posture gait issues. Dyspraxia. Dyspraxia looks like clumsiness. I think sometimes we have kind of a reputation for being sort of clumsy, and like knocking things over, and having very poor like balance and that kind of thing. And there's a term for it. It's dyspraxia, and it is basically like our motor function isn't quite there. It isn't like 100%.
Like, I know this, but I feel like most of the time you are pretty graceful. You're not clumsy, but you'll have sometimes these moments where I see it and I'm like, bruh, get yourself together. What are your fucking hands doing right now?
Yeah.
And it's just so acute, but so brief that it's just like, whoa. Like, are you stroking out? Like,
yeah. And for the record, I am aware of it every time that it happens.
I'm sure.
It's...
and it happens. I do the same thing. Like, there are days where I'm just like, fucking get it together, brain. Like, what is happening? But
yeah, so dyspraxia, or there's a longer term for it, developmental. I don't know. I can't remember honestly, but I just know it as dyspraxia. Which again is basically just like motor control issues.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a I don't know, study, an article, something that I saw years ago that's like, we think of human beings as having 5 senses, but actually we have something like 20. And a lot of the senses are things that you don't think about. One of them is proprioception, which is like your body's sense of what your limbs are doing, basically. It's so that your body can realistically estimate the distance between your hands and like kind of where they are in space. Spatial perception is definitely another thing, like the at its most basic, the difference between what is my body and what is not my body, what is like all of the other things around me. And so those two things are things where we kind of have some issues sometimes, and it is related to dyspraxia, or it is dyspraxia, I guess. If I am holding something, I'm holding an object and I need to put it down somewhere. And if there's not an immediately clear, like the edge of a table or whatever, like some place where I can just sort of put it down, if I have to maneuver that like around another object or whatever, I'm knocking shit over. I'm absolutely going to do that. And no matter how careful I am about it, like stuff's going to get knocked over. I understand it now, but there are definitely times, a near infinite number of times in my life, that I have like knocked some object over and been like, how did that even happen? And like now I get it, and I'm just my fucking muscles don't work. My muscles are like 95%. They're doing 95% of what I'm asking of them, but that extra 5%, and that's really what it is. It's the critical failures of things. When it's bad, it's really bad. There's a thing that's often called the ADHD walk, and everyone who's listening who has ADHD or who knows someone who's ADHD is like, yeah, that. I'm sure that you've seen me do it. There's a thing where I'm walking from A to B, but there is something partially in the way, like the edge of a counter or something like that, where instead of walking in like a curve, I'm walking in a straight line and I'm going to whack my hip on that thing, or I'm going to whack my knee on like the edge of the table or whatever it might be. And I don't even realize that I do this, but I catch myself sometimes. Like if I'm walking, for example, from the stairs to the fridge, that's a straight line, but there's like the very corner of a counter for the listeners in our kitchen, very corner of the counter there. And I walk that line perfectly straightly, but I like lean my hip out around the thing. Postural sway, I guess it's called sometimes, but like we will a lot of times walk in a straight line where we're like slightly obstructed, and then again, rather than like kind of doing a curve around the thing so that it's never an issue, we sort of just like lean around the thing while we're going. But no, so the kitchen counter thing, yeah, when I'm walking past it, I unconsciously put my hand on the corner as I'm walking past it to like childproof myself from like whacking my hip on it. And I feel like if you watch me walking where it's not like a perfectly clear path between them, you'll absolutely see me like step around stuff in kind of a weird way, or like kind of sway my hip around, counters and edges of tables and things.
The thing that you do when we're walking in public that drives me absolutely crazy is you will accommodate people who are like 10 feet away from us without like telling me what's going on and like shoving me out of the way. I don't even see these people half the time because they're that far away. Like it happened when we were at the zoo. And I'm like, what are you even doing? And these people are like literally nowhere near us. And you're like already like planning for some kind of collision that literally might not even happen.
I don't know how much that's like a dyspraxia thing and how much of it is, I don't know, like a people pleasing thing. Like I'm in such a hurry to get out of the way. Part of it too is that I have some like body dysmorphia issues, and it's related, I think, to having very little sense of like the size of my body. Like I really don't know how much space I occupy, and I think that I assume I occupy a much bigger space than I do. So yeah, absolutely. We'll be walking on a sidewalk, like side by side or whatever, and there'll be people coming the other way, and I don't want to step in front of you. So I usually try to like stop and let you get a little ahead of me, and then I'll just slide in behind you in order to make space for people. But I think, yeah, for whatever reason, that doesn't occur to you, and you'll just be like, why are you stopping?
I'm like, what the fuck are you actually doing?
I'm making space for these people who are coming the other way. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's like a dyspraxia thing, but yeah, it's absolutely a thing that I do. Yeah, I think it's largely just that like I don't really know how much space I take up, and so I'm just trying to make as much possible room as I can, for people passing by, whatever.
It's interesting. It's like diametrically opposed to the don't move for men mission that the women are on right now.
Sure. No, don't move for men. Let dudes get out of the way.
They're shoulder checking us all, by the way.
I have no doubt. Because they're bags of shit. I shouldn't say that.
That's fun, but
literally
if you're right
not
behind me and you're getting out of their way, that feels bad. We're all losing.
Well, again, the thought is like there are people coming the other way, so I need to not be in their way. You know what I mean? I need to not be like taking up the whole.
I get it. You're being nice. I'm being a dick. You know what? It's classic us.
Well, I mean, again, in my case, it's informed largely by people pleasing, I think, and trying to minimize myself as much as possible so as to never take up space around me, whether, physical or emotional or whatever else. I don't know if it's like a politeness thing or whatever, but I'm always like, you should go ahead of me. Like I'll step in behind you, because I don't want to step out in front of you, I guess.
You do.
Occasionally. I have to like make a concerted, like there's a thought process that goes into that. Like there's actually like a point where, I'll see people coming and I'll be like, okay, we gotta make some room. Like I'm in the middle of the sidewalk, so I need to get off to the side. And then a lot of times I'll be like, well, fucking, I can tell that you get irritated when I stop and then try to slide in behind you. So like maybe I need to just like speed up and walk in front of you instead, which it feels weird. My whole psychology is bad. But yeah, that's mostly everything. Oh, pain responses. So a lot of us, I did mention this a little bit earlier, but a lot of us have kind of disproportionate pain responses. So an example that people often give sometimes is someone might be walking by an object and whack their wrist, and it's just like a little thumb, and will like howl in pain. But then that same person might break a leg and continue walking on it. I imagine that it is great to be a tattoo artist and to work on autistic clients, because I think for most of us, we don't move, we don't complain, we just kind of sit there and let you do what you need to do. My artist has specifically commented on this a number of times. I think about like toe pain, you know, like stubbing your toe is like the worst experience in the world. Like you don't even have to like, you know,
Right, that's strong.
you know, it doesn't even have to be like, oh, I stubbed my toe hard enough to like cause damage or like fracture something or whatever. Like banging your elbow on something, it's just, yeah, it's so goddamn painful. But then I think about like, I went through intensive chemo that actually destroyed part of my pelvis, because I have these huge tumors in my pelvis that it did away with, and I had these like empty spaces in my pelvis or whatever. And I was like, this is fine, you know, or like massive systemic pain. I don't always have pain with my migraines. And for a long time, I thought I was just lucky that I mostly didn't have pain with them, but I'd had like, you know, a bunch of other neurologic side effects. These days, I wonder if it's because my pain threshold is weird and I'm in pain, but I just don't know it. And like, it has to be an incredibly bad one for that to like cross past the threshold where I actually start to like register that I'm in pain. So again, coming back to like interoception. But yeah, we often will have like I said, like disproportionate, you know, you'll break something and be like, nah, this is fine. But then, you know, get a paper cut and just be like in agony. I think back to like the number of times that I was a kid and had some like relatively minor ding or whatever. For the listeners, my father was born in 1940, and had like a very kind of blue collar upbringing. So anyway, he was very much the I'll give you something to cry about type. And just the number of times that I would like, you know, hurt myself very slightly or whatever and have like kind of an outsized response to it, and just him being like, what are you crying about? Like, you know, just being shitty about it. And I think that further informs my like outward response to pain a lot of the time. I am a lot less likely to express when I'm in significant pain than I am when I'm in like a little bit of pain. I slept weird and now like my shoulder is achy or whatever it might be, as opposed to like I'm on fire.
Well, I've never seen you on fire, so I'm not sure about that.
It's been a long time since I was on fire. The last time that I was actively on fire would have been in Jay's garage. We were doing blacksmithing stuff, and I was wearing a polyester sweater, which is a thing that, by the way, anyone, if you're not aware, do not ever wear polyester around open flames. That's bad.
Did you guys ever read a fucking book before you started doing that shit?
I didn't.
Clearly.
Yeah, no, it was very fuck around and find out. But yeah, no, I just didn't know that. That was not a piece of knowledge that I had. And anyway, at one point, my sweater caught some shrapnel, and I was very briefly on fire. So that was, I don't know, 20 years ago probably. But, you know, again, my response to being very briefly on fire was to just peel the sweater off and be like, I probably should take this off now. I feel like you've kind of chimed in. I was going to ask you if there are things that you notice, anything that you are aware of me doing, like physically, that's unusual, I guess.
No, not really beyond like what we've talked about. Some of my exes that I've lived with before had like way more pronounced stims and stuff that was way harder to actually live with. So honestly, like, yeah, this continues to be the best. So suck it, losers.
One of the questions that I was going to ask was like, is there anything are there any changes that you feel that you've had to make about your life and your lifestyle and everything that are like kind of directly related to my neurodivergence and you know the oddnesses I guess therein? But then I realized that that's just every relationship. Like I could be completely neurotypical and you'd still have to change things. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is kind of the point of this podcast too. Is like,
True.
I mean, yes, but that we're always doing that no matter what. So
yeah. So yeah, bodies are weird. Largely, these are things that affect me personally, or are really, really prevalent amongst like most neurodivergent people that I know. So of course there are definitely things that I've missed. So bodies are weird. Everybody's body is weird. Neurodivergent bodies might be slightly weirder. But it's not a competition, and really nobody wins that anyway. So there we have it. Any parting shots for the listeners?
I don't want to take shots unless it's booze.
I was going to say that's the first time in your life you've ever said that.
All right, Dick.
Okay. Well, good to be back. Good to be back on the horse. And yeah, we have a couple more episodes conceptually lined up. Hopefully we can manage to record them at a slightly better cadence than once a month. But you know, we'll do our best.
Hope is not a strategy.
It is not. But I intend to never get COVID again. First of all, so that's a thing. And yeah, I know. Okay. Well, as always, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. And we'll chat again soon.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye, audience.
You can find us on social media on Instagram at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast. Or if you happen to be on Blue Sky, idkwhatthatmeans.bsky.social. Or you can contact us by email at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast@gmail.com.
We hope you have fun or learn something. Probably not both, but hopefully both.
Probably not both.
Anyways, thanks for listening to I Don't Know What That Means.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.